Hello, I'm Rich Leox with Talbot Rising. Today we have a group of local experts gathered to discuss the impact of President Trump's crackdown on undocumented immigrants on our community. To my right, we have Matthew Peters, who heads the Chesapeake Multicultural Resource Center, which works with immigrants from all over the world. And to my left, we have Sandy Brown, who works for Midshore Pro Bono, which connects lawyers with low-income people who need legal help. We have Yvette Solerick, who works with Midshore Pro Bono, who is working on a new project for vulnerable populations on the Eastern Shore. And Connie Pullen, who is a social worker, who is the head of the Immigration Committee for Talbot Rising. And thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
So, Matt, let's start with you.
Okay.
Talk to us about how many people we have on the Eastern Shore who are undocumented, where they came from, and why they're here.
Okay. So, as we know, here in Talbot County and many parts of, I would assume, the United States have gone under quite a significant demographic shift over the past 15 years. Most of that has been sparked with immigrants coming from Mexico, and most recently now coming from the northern triangle of Central America.
And that
would be Guatemala, Salvador, and Honduras. And if you read even today's headlines and lots of headlines about these regions, they are marked as the most violent regions in the world, which is provoking a lot of this shift in demographics for people not only to seek out a better life, but to escape poverty, to escape misery, violence, gangs, organized crime, you name it. So here, when we're talking just locally, we've seen this shift pretty substantially. We see it, in our school systems right now, at the hospital usage, and it's getting around probably in the elementary school. It's around 30% of students are Hispanic.
Oh my goodness.
Which is a large demographic shift.
Wow.
And the vast majority of them are from the northern triangle of Central America.
Wow.
So we've heard over 2,000 stories now of different immigrants from different parts of the world and the Eastern Shore. Again, most of them are from Guatemala, and then followed by Honduras, Mexico, and El Salvador. And each story is unique. Each reason why they're here is unique. But that they're here, the story starts to take shape, that they're here to start a family, to help their family, to be a part of a community, to find a way to put their roots down, and to start moving forward again. So each story is unique and different, but the theme there is escaping poverty, misery, violence in Central America.
So what's been the shift in the U.S. policy towards undocumented folks?
So I think it's what I see now. Our immigration laws are pretty set and have been pretty set since I've been working and looking at this. I don't think there's been any real variance in the laws, but of course policy is different on how we interact with people that might have documents or might not. I think the shift obviously is tone, which since a lot of immigration work is, it depends on a person's interpretation of it. People are given more leeway now to interpret it in different ways, which could be still a positive in some cases, but right now in most cases it's a negative. So the tone has definitely shifted, and since there's still no clear pathway for so many people, taking a different tone automatically puts in a lot of fear of that uncertainty. It was uncertain 5 years ago, it was uncertain 3 years ago, it's still uncertain now, but now the tone is bad things will probably happen instead of maybe good things happening.
So what do you say, or anyone else say, to those folks who say they're here illegally and they should go?
So
That's a hard question.
It is a very tough question. All I can say is each person has their own unique story. We don't know until we ask. We don't know until we work with them. We don't know until we know that family. It could be their family was murdered by gangs and they're escaping for that. It could be that they're faced with such extreme poverty that they're literally starving in their own countries and they have no opportunity. They could be here just because, they got offered a pretty nice job and they're making some money. We don't know until we ask, until we find out. So I have nothing against our laws being enforced and immigration being enforced. I don't think anyone really does. But who are the ones that should be enforcing it? Should it be our school teachers? Should it be us? Should it be our local police? No, I think is the answer. We have a group, ICE or the federal government,
Right.
that knows these, that are experienced in this, and they're the ones that need to take the correct procedures to enforce immigration law. As a local community, I think what we're most concerned with is the effects that could have on our schools, on our children, and our churches, as well as the trust that we build within our community. And we want to make sure that we are a country of laws, that for any case due process is followed, that they have their chance to tell their story, and that it can be heard and interpreted in a court of law. I can't tell what the judge will determine, but we can at least give people a fighting chance to tell their story.
So what impact are you all seeing in this change in policy on the people that you're dealing with?
Well, I'm seeing, as a social worker, my real job is at Eastern Shore Psychological Services, and we do all the school-based mental health in all the Talbot County schools. We have counselors in each of the schools. And so many of the counselors are coming back to the clinic at the end of the day, and I myself have experienced, when you talk to these children, they're very afraid. It's gotten better, actually, in the last month, Matt, since you have started really working with the families and giving them a path, through pro bono and getting the emergency contact forms done properly, because I think they're seeing that the community is more than willing to work, with the people, and the fact that our status is now as a welcoming community. We need to continue to be welcoming.
So
to
let's
people,
just
but
clarify,
they're scared.
what are
The
they
kids
afraid
scared.
of? They're
They're
afraid
gonna
of
come home and their parents
won't be there.
Yeah,
Right.
and who's
Are they
going to
gonna-
take care of me, and
Right.
What's going to happen to my family, and
Right.
if they're getting mental health services, does someone have a medical record so they can continue to get the medication that they might need in order to be successful in school? All of those problems, but mostly the fear about what's going to happen to my family, just like any kid would have in a family. These are people that live in our communities, their families are in our communities, and they're part of our communities. And
Right.
kids shouldn't be afraid, and they're afraid.
So when the Easton Town Council recently designated Easton as a welcoming town, what does that mean exactly, and how does that differ from Sanctuary City?
So since there's no definition of a sanctuary city, and there's no definition of a welcoming city, it's all semantics. Basically what it boils down to, there's a provision in the immigration law that says authorities can voluntarily assist with enforcing immigration laws by checking a person's status. Now we focus on that keyword voluntary. So if you can voluntarily do it, as we've seen in the news this week in Texas, as their governor has to do it, us as a democracy, we can choose to voluntarily not do it. And it clearly says you cannot be coerced or forced to practice this. Now the law enforcement officials here says their policy hasn't changed. They have never asked about immigration status, but this welcoming city now just lets us be able to tell others, this is our policy here.
So
But
do you think the symbolism is important?
the symbolism is important, and also the having everyone on the same page is so very important, that everyone follows the same policy.
Right. So Sandy, what role does Midshore Bono play? Pro bono play in this?
So we're a legal services provider, so our main focus is to provide access to volunteer attorneys who provide pro bono services for all the general civil legal issues for anybody who meets our income guidelines. So low income people. We don't discriminate against whether you're documented or undocumented or anything like that, what many organizations do. We want to help everybody. We are big fans of the Multicultural Resource Center because we have a shared vision. We share similar populations and we want to help people. So when, I think back in February, when the big meeting happened over in Marydell, and Yvette, who just started with us in October, Spanish speaking, decided to go and check it out, and Matt and Yvette went together and saw that there was clearly trouble brewing with this population. And immediately we started meeting on a weekly basis to say, what is the issue? What are we doing? How do we help? Everything was blowing up all over, and frankly, it was blowing up statewide. My email was blowing up from other legal services providers across the state about helping families get contingency planning or family planning if you're undocumented, and the word on the street was when you get picked up from ICE and get deported, your children will be taken from you and put in institutions or orphanages, and you won't see them again. And wow, did that cause some hysteria, panic, fear issues. And so we sat a lot. Every week we met every Tuesday to figure out how do we address this. Plus we were on conference calls with other organizations in Baltimore addressing the same thing. And so we realized that these families needed to have contingency plans, family plans, that emergency contact form that were correct and up to date, and dispel some myths about the idea of the power of attorney was going to protect them, because in Maryland that's not the case. In California potentially, but in Maryland it's not the case. So we're still moving along. It's ever changing, but I think the point for us is to work together to send a same message, a consistent message that don't get taken advantage of, because what was sensitive to me in my program were the fact that these clients were getting taken advantage of. People could draft powers of attorney or charge them a certain amount of money for doing forms that we could maybe get attorneys to do for them for free.
And some of the forms weren't useful.
And so then they were being completely taken advantage of because they were given a form, charged astronomical money, and it didn't matter anyway.
Right. So what has been the impact of ICE on the Eastern Shore at this point? We have a detention center in Salisbury.
It's
correct?
down in Snow Hill.
Yeah.
It's got 200 beds, and I think they're full.
I've never been there.
Yeah, we are been in Salisbury. We actually had a meeting a few weeks ago, and our idea on the project that we are working is to go to Snow Hill, to the detention center, go there, do an intake, and then connect those immigrants that they are waiting for their trial. And because of the lack of immigration attorneys on the Eastern Shore and the lack of Spanish-speaking attorneys on the Eastern Shore, a lot of those litigants go to court by themselves without representation.
Right.
So, unfortunately, there is a lack of education in their home countries, so they don't know how the system works in the United States.
Right.
So, our idea is to be able to connect them with attorneys. We are working with Matt and with other agencies from Baltimore, with immigration attorneys, that hopefully they'll be able to help them. So that's the main idea.
Now you have the justice. What's
Crowd.
that?
So this was a very. So
it's
we've
very
been
exciting.
networking. So since Yvette started, really we kind of launched this in February, I think, is when we
It's a great
decided,
idea,
and
actually.
we really started hearing other
Right.
things. So we've now all these other organizations, Clinic, for example, the Catholic Legal Immigration Network, the Maryland,
Center.
the Esperanza Center, Catholic Charities, the Maryland Access to Justice Commission is really taking the lead statewide, and so we're uncovering a network of resources, which is great. And so Yvette, being from Spain and having gone through the immigration process herself, is near and dear to her heart. So she's been really taking the lead on this project, and so we're just hoping that we can strengthen it and get more attorneys to come over and help through her screening process.
Yeah, I mean, the immigration process, it's not easy. And as Sandy said, I'm from Spain, so I did it all by myself. I was lucky enough to have the knowledge to do it. But I think for me, as an immigrant, it's so important to be able to help other immigrants that they don't have the resources, they don't know what to do. I won't even imagine how, the way they live, of fear every day, as you mentioned.
The kids in school.
Fear of what's going to happen if I get deported, what's going to happen with my kids, or, I can't even imagine that. So I think that's very important for us to do this project, and for them to know, hey, we are here, we speak your language, don't worry, we speak Spanish, we can help you. And we'll help you through that process. Don't go to court. Don't represent yourself if you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the biggest challenge is we're on the Eastern Shore of Maryland.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Resources.
and so through the networking that we've had, the folks over at Clinic had put us in contact with
Right.
Crowd Justice,
Right.
which is a crowdfunding platform. It's all web-based, and they were very instrumental. We turned that thing around in 2 days, and so there is a place to go. You can go to crowdjustice.org, find our Vulnerable Population Project, and donate.
And it's in our newsletter every week.
Right, so
we're
yeah, I was gonna say,
Rising, right?
what role can Talbot Rising
We
play?
have that in our newsletter
Right.
to donate. It's
Right,
been
and
here
to
for the
donate
last
to
3
Matt,
weeks.
because I think Matt
You're
is
trying to
looking-
raise money too.
Matt is looking to, I think, hire another full-time person if you
Yeah,
can.
we're expanding the immigration services we provide through our office, since we're an accredited organization to do that. And then so Talbot Rising is, I know, more based on a political movement.
Right.
To get some political voice out there. And there's lots of also satellite.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, right.
And one of the first ones I've been working with is in the Bay 100 Citizens for Social Justice.
Right,
I think I got that right. And people want to help and find out ways to do it. And so we've come up with kind of a plan for people that really want to, when something happens, be there. So
So
we're
you
working
think
on a plan.
activism helps in that sense of
It does. So
gathering?
what we've decided is kind of just to start, because again, this is all new to most of us. Each group of persons or each family that wants to contribute, or church group, they're going to try and get $500 just set aside. Now we know if something happens to a family, it costs money to go to Salisbury.
Right.
It costs money to get to have a consultation with an attorney. It costs money to fax things. It costs money to get an interpreter. Everything costs money. And that's, our vulnerable population doesn't have access to a lot of that. So if a family or a church group can have that 500, we can have this kind of networking, let the families know, look, this is put away for a rainy day. We hopefully never need to touch it. But if we do, there's no strings attached. You
Right.
got it. You get what you have to get done. You connect with a
And
lawyer.
like
You go
sponsoring a
visit
child,
someone.
the old sponsor a child.
So we're starting that, and we'll be doing a press release soon, and trying to get others encouraged, and then let our community know, just to
This
give them
is
a
a
little
way
bit
to
more
help.
breathing room. If something does happen, just call the hotline, and you'll get some resources.
Right.
Because we know how traumatic it can be those first few days when you really don't know what's going on or what will happen.
And it's going to be less likely to find attorney. First of all, dearth of attorneys on the Eastern Shore just doing civil work for my organization,
Right.
period. So immigration attorneys, really, really difficult. Plus we're battling the notarios, the people who are doing the fraudulent work, so that's a battle. But if we can get some money, low bono, some money to offset the charges, it's thousands of dollars to do an immigration case, $300 an hour in some cases. So it's helpful to build resources. So people who want to help, yeah, hate to make it, but money really does. In this situation, money does help. I mean, money helps to put away for the project, for families, to pay legal fees, number of things to support that family, and that's the bottom line, unfortunately.
I think the other important thing that Talbot Rising has to offer, and all the other groups, there's about 4,000 members of progressive groups on the shore at this point. So if anyone needed to mobilize, a large group of people who believe in this, they could be mobilized fairly easily.
Right.
Matt has basically asked us to stand down, and we've done very simple kinds of things because, as he explained to us, we can do more harm than good.
Yeah.
You can be an activist and actually
Why?
harm.
By drawing attention to
Damn, that's
people
so
who
harsh.
don't
That's so harsh.
No.
That's an interesting point.
No.
He's a
Um,
realist. He's a
He's a
realist.
realist.
He's a realist.
And you
Democracy
don't want
dies in
harm.
darkness, you know.
As
No
Yvette said, immigration is complicated.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Um,
And you should share
and
your
it-
news story.
Yeah.
And if we
We don't want to
do
polarize
something and we
things.
don't quite understand what we're doing,
You
Right.
can hurt
Mess them
someone.
real people's lives are at
Yeah.
stake here. So we want to not keep it in the shadows. We want to be out in the forefront, but we want to make sure each step we take is a positive one and in the right direction.
Right.
And we know it's easy to get caught up in hysteria and panic.
Sure.
Well, and even just enthusiasm.
And
Right.
But it's got to
enthusiasm.
be
Right.
directed in the right way.
But I want to make sure that enthusiasm, the bottom line is our families are safe.
Right.
So sometimes everyone needs to breathe and remember who we're fighting for.
Right.
So if you had advice to give to the average citizen before he or she acts, give money and contact. Contact.
It starts with
or-
awareness,
Yes,
then knowledge,
right.
and then skills. And we can't jump to just doing things first. We need to take the time to become aware of our families, get to know what's affecting them, talk to different groups, reach out, then build your knowledge, learn about the laws, learn about what each step is. Then you're ready to take those steps on actually implementing things. I think so, a lot of times we want to jump to the
in.
action piece, and that's commemorable, but we need to make sure we have the awareness. We're making people aware of what happens to families, what happens at these places, and the knowledge, and then we put the skills in place.
And doing this, but even directing people to Matt and Yvette. Yvette has a cell phone that's dedicated just for her to take phone calls. It's blowing up and ringing off the hook. We are opening up a satellite office in Centerville to help address those in Kent and Queen Anne's County, because this is not just a Talbot County issue.
Right.
This is an
It's
Eastern
everywhere.
Shore issue.
Right.
I think that the folks down in Salisbury would like us to open up an office in Wicomico County as well. So it's really quite blowing up. So the screening process I know is working very well, because when you talk to them, it may be a divorce custody issue. It could be a foreclosure, believe it or not, issue. It could be bankruptcy. It could be other debt. So we handle a wealth of legal issues. But this immigration thing is also very important to screen. So I think at this point in time, both Matt and Yvette, we're screening the clients, meeting with them, talking to them, getting correct information in their hands. We try to get as many resources as we can from other organizations. Know Your Rights cards are being handed out. They're on back order from that organization that you sent, so we can hand those things out, and we can give them to groups, to get to churches, to get the right message out.
And that's one of the things that Talbot Rising did, because we were trying to think of ways that we could be helpful. So we got Know Your Rights from the clinic, and we so we sent that to all the social services agencies on the Midshore, all the mental health clinics on the Midshore, all the pediatricians' offices on the Midshore. And if someone who's watching this broadcast wants to know a little bit more about that, they can certainly reach us at talbotrising.org, and we can certainly send more information out, because that's something simple that we can do that gives people in our organization a job to do. It's just what they wanted to do to be helpful. And then we tried to get the emergency contact notes to you, so you could do that properly with the kids. And that's a big help, because that we have really noticed in the schools when we're working with the children in the schools, since everyone has started to work together collaboratively and cooperatively with each other, the panic in the kids has been reduced. So that's a positive sign. So we're making a difference in doing this work.
And you have to reduce the panic in the parents as
Yeah.
well.
Well,
yes. Not an easy
And you do
job.
that through education, which will lead to empowering them. And once they feel empowered, yes, they can start to control the situation a little more, and that panic and hysteria will go
But even more important than that, it's sort of a non-partisan view. I mean, how do we treat people in the world? How do we treat people in our community? All of us, anybody watching this, you go in and you smile at people and you tell them they have beautiful children, and you welcome them, and you pay them a decent wage when they do work in your home. I mean, it's important just to treat people, and that doesn't mean that you're a progressive or a conservative. It's just how we interact in our community.
It shouldn't be political.
It shouldn't be political.
political.
It's how
It's
we
what's
treat
right.
people.
It's like the law shouldn't be political,
Yeah.
but it's the law.
Well, I have a sister, Kathy Moore, and she's a controller in Caroline County, and she's very conservative. But we were taught in our family to be kind and to be community members. She was driving to Easton last weekend, and she saw this man who was Hispanic, whose car had broken down, and it was pouring rain, as you remember, last Saturday. And the cars were backed up, and no one stopped to help him. But, in our family, we were taught that kindness is the best virtue that you can have. She stopped and brought him into Easton and took him to a gas station, got him gas, and drove him back with the gas. And that's what all of us should do, because you have to live in love and kindness. You can't live in hate and fear. And that's a choice that we make every day, and that has nothing to do with politics or anything else, just how we choose to live our lives.
But people judge.
Yeah. People do
Unfortunately,
But we can all set an example.
yeah, so that's an example that happened to me. It was about 6 or 7 months ago. No, actually, maybe it was, about a year ago or so. I went to a big store. I usually like to buy local, but I was with one of my coworkers, which is also Spanish speaking. So I went to this big store, and the cashier was very nice with the lady in front of us. We were speaking Spanish. So the cashier was very nice with the lady in front of us, was playing actually with the baby. All right. And then here we go. The cashier passed our groceries, And then I said, how much is it? No answer. I'm like, excuse me, how much is it? No answer. So I was like, wow. I asked one more time, how
You should have
much
asked
is
her in
it?
Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
right.
like, and no answer. I was like, all right, well, guess I'm gonna pay with credit card instead of cash. She didn't even say thank you, bye.
Nothing.
I'm so
Nothing.
sorry that happened.
Yeah,
That's
me
so
too.
mean.
And I left the store. My coworker was like, "It's okay. That happened to me before." I'm like, "Oh no, like
not okay.
this is not
It's
gonna
not
happen
okay.
to me ever again." So we left the store, and like Sandy knows, it was like, "Oh no, that's not right. Like I can't leave this store just like that."
Right.
So I went back in. I talked with the manager, and I said, "Hey, I'm here. I'm legally, even if I wasn't,
Right.
you know,
Right.
it's like I pay my taxes. I'm legal, and yes, I speak Spanish. What's the matter? Lucky me that I speak more than one language,
Right.
right? But I couldn't believe it.
But
that
you
that
had your
happened.
voice, and we got to make
Yes,
sure
yes,
everybody
exactly.
Well,
finds
it
their
comes back
voice.
to what Matt was saying, that
Finding your
knowledge
voice.
empowerment is
But
key.
it's for all low-income folks. I mean, even
Yes.
I mean, it's so
just
we deal with low-income folks all day long in the worst possible situations of their lives, and you try to empower them and you try to give them as much resources and information. Maybe they can help themselves, but people feel when feel helpless and they feel powerless, it's not a good place. And not to mention what was the most shocking thing for me was what was coming out of the home countries, which spiraled many of these folks
What are
into
some
the
of their
fear.
stories? Yeah.
So if the home countries were saying this is what you need, and here's Matt saying, but no, this is what you need, and I remember seeing you feel so frustrated because you've spent so many years building the trust and faith of the community, and then all of a sudden they thought maybe you were not telling the truth, and I couldn't imagine.
It's part of the
But then it
role
seems to
you
be
play when
rolling
you
it back
stand
on.
up, right?
But I
Yeah.
think the hard thing is standing your ground, because we don't
Right.
want them to live in a cycle of lies.
No.
We don't want them to have to feel like they're hiding all the time.
Or not wanted.
Yeah.
They're part of our community.
Right.
People are part of our community.
And then
Everybody
you
is part
tack
of our
on to the
community.
fact that, okay, well, the reality is they are undocumented. So there are organizations where we can help them because it's not within our charter. We're a nonprofit 501c3 private organization, but legal aid that's federally funded can't help anyone who's not undocumented. So there's barriers everywhere. So I think you need to just get together.
So just to clarify what Matt was saying too is TACL, which is a local organization that all the churches go to. What you're asking is for each church that feels comfortable doing so to raise a certain amount of money and have it set aside in a certain fund
Great idea.
that you can call at any time. No strings attached. The families can use that money in any way, shape, or form that might be needed to use that money. And I think that's a great idea.
great
I know
idea.
that I belong to the Quaker Church and they've set up a fund.
Like I said, because we're going to pray every day, we never
Yeah.
touch that money. So
Yeah.
there's no
Right.
need to give it to an organization or put
Yeah.
it, just keep it,
Yep.
Right.
And it's
tie
there.
it in a rubber band.
Right.
Yeah, right. It's a
And
great
hopefully
idea.
in 5 years we start a nice scholarship program with that money. But we need to let the community know that
It's a
people
safety
care,
net.
and if something happens, we understand
Yeah,
you're
it's a
going through a
great
lot,
idea.
and we're here to back you up. And I think it's a good another symbol of our community strength and our commitment to all families here. So
Yeah.
it's just one of the first ideas we had on how do we help, right?
Right.
Without jumping too far ahead of ourselves.
We gave us things to do, right?
Right.
that we could feel helpful. So.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
This was wonderful, and I'm sure this is a subject we'll revisit, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. But thank you all. And thank you all for joining us today.